Hey folks, this is Doug. I'm going to read my friend Lyndon Jeremiah's Two Boilermakers. I read it the other day on the anniversary of Richard Burton's death, and got some great response, and Lyndon liked it. But I'd like to try it again now that it's been percolating a while in my head, and see if I might do it better than I did before. That's the idea anyway. Two Boilermakers by Lyndon Jeremiah. I dreamt I was at the Miner's Arms at precisely way back when. The mist lay low and heavy that night in Pont Rodovan, and the people of the valley slept softly in their beds, digging at the seam of life and dreams that swirled around their heads. The barkeep had many faces of people I had known, all gently out of focus as I sat there on my own. A man appeared at my side. His steps had not been heard. A hand placed on my shoulder, then he sat without a word. His face had many ages through poverty and wealth. His eyes had seen great splendor, despair, and failing health. Pockmarks tried to thinly veil God's generosity. Perfection made from all his flaws with a rugged dignity. No awkwardness existed, no feelings of attrition, why each of us was cast that night in the other's apparition. Two Boilermakers were placed upon the bar. His piercing eyes, they beckoned me to join him in a jar. At first, I heard a whisper, a tremor from the vales, cascading through the mountains of our beloved Wales. When at last he spoke, the mountains rose and fell into the seas. The room was his cathedral with angels on their knees. The voice of generations from the past and through all time was sitting there beside me in majesty sublime. We talked about the reasons each of us were there. We found it had no merits, then drank without a care. He told me of price he'd paid for his fame at all cost, his 30 pieces of silver, and the people he had lost. The women who had loved him, his regret of ruined lives, harvesting the hearts of gold of all his loving wives. He spoke of she who changed his life, and all their wondrous things, and how they'd ruled in Hollywood in the Valley of the Kings. He regaled the many stories of Harris and O'Toole, of Flynn and Fairbanks Jr., enthroned on his bar stool. How he'd reigned in Camelot and become the Prince of Danes. Those bardic words fell from his lips like cloudless summer rains. As the drinks, they kept on flowing, the stories never ceased. Gielgud and Olivier released a raging beast. Baker and Spinetti, how Dylan made him sad, how his father bought him so cheaply from his dad. The guilt he felt for his success, guilted prizes that he chased, and how the lords of theater considered it a waste. I never got to tell him I portrayed him on the stage, and how I'd felt his presence, his anger, and his rage. How I tried to mimic the way he walked and how he smoked, the way he drew his audience, the way he told a joke. I didn't tell him of the rumor that he and I were kin. My family were Jenkins, just the same as him. How my great-grandfather, Daniel, had walked from Pont Rodovan and fell in love with Elsie, never to return again. I never felt to mention what he meant to me, how his life had cast aside impossibility. I never said because he knew. I saw it in his eyes. He knew the legacy he left on the day he died. I will stop that dream from fading, and one thing is for certain. I never will forget the night I spent with Richard Burton. That's Two Boilermakers by Lyndon Jeremiah, as read by me. Have a good one.